Hello, hello, hola, como estas, slow Baja amigos. My heaping dose of gratitude goes out to Mary McGee. I hope you listened to the podcast with Mary. Went up last week. She is just a pistol. Funny, witty, self-deprecating, great recall, 85 years old, great recall of stuff that happened 60 years ago. I can't say thank you enough to Mary for making some time for Slow Baja. Today's conversation is with Peter Brock. As I mentioned in the podcast with Mary, I called Peter to get some information, to get some stories about Mary in the early Baja races. Peter was running the Datsun racing program, and he is an automotive legend. He got hired at GM when he was 19 years old, penned the 1963 Corvette Stingray, one of probably the most beautiful, iconic Corvettes of all time. Got snapped up by Shelby and designed the Daytona Coupe for all you Ford versus Ferrari fans. Yes, he's the guy who who designed the Daytona Coupe. Went on to take a little unknown Japanese car brand, Datsun, as Mary says, and raced on Sunday, sold on Monday, and really established that brand through racing the Datsun Roadster, the Datsun 510, and the Datsun Z car on the track and in the dirt. And Peter Brock was kind enough to talk to me a little bit about Mary. The conversation that I had with Mary was too long to share Peter's conversation, but I really wanted to share it with you. So here it is today. And without further ado, enjoy this conversation. I sincerely hope that I get a chance to get a microphone in Peter's hands soon, and we can all hear more about Datsuns in Baja. Hey, this is Michael Emery. Thanks for tuning into the Slow Baja. This podcast is powered by Tequila Fortaleza, handmade in small batches, and hands down, my favorite tequila. Hey, I want to tell you about your new must-have accessory for your next Baja trip. Benchmark Maps has released a beautiful, beautiful Baja California Road and Recreation Atlas. It's a 72-page large format book of detailed maps and recreation guides that makes the perfect planning tool for exploring Baja. Pick yours up at benchmarkmaps.com. I'm on the line with the legend Pete Brock, and I'm going to set it up here for the Slow Baja listeners who aren't familiar with Pete. Peter, you've got a lifelong history in automotive design, automotive fabrication, and automotive racing that spans 63 Corvette, if I'm not mistaken. You jump in here and correct me when I'm wrong. The Shelby Daytona Coupe, and then, of course, you came to my attention because my first car was a Datsun 510 of campaigning the Datsun Roadsters and campaigning the Datsun racing program that was so dominant in the 60s and 70s and leading the Datsun program in Baja. And I called today, and you're so gracious to call me back to get some stories about Mary McGee. And, well, here we are. So tell me what I've got correct and incorrect on your career. And
well, you've got all the correct design stuff and whatever. And it was the important thing that we're looking at is we're looking about, early or mid 60s and 70s that the Japanese car industry had not yet really landed on these shores with any great success. So my team, BRE, was one of the first to begin running Japanese cars when nobody else was. I was the very first to run a Japanese car in the United States. And I ran with a little company called Hino, Hino, which is one of the largest trucks and bus manufacturers in the world, but they specialize in Asia. And they had a small group within their company that wanted to build a high-end, high-quality car. And so they were interested in doing something. And I had some friends that were running Hinos in Japan, and they suggested that I bring one of those cars over here and develop it for racing in Southern California, which we did. And that program turned out very well. And as we moved along, of course, we were looking for other areas to run. And one of those areas was Baja. And I'd always had a great fascination for running in Baja, but did not have much experience. And that was when I got together with Mary McGee, because Mary, being one of the top motorcycle racers in that period, had gone down below the border. There weren't too many people that had gone down below the border, and she had a lot of experience down there. And so I decided to tap into that experience and asked Mary to be the lead driver on a prototype program that we ran in '67 with a little pickup truck. And so it was both a chance to do a test for the factory and showing what the pickup trucks could do in their ruggedness in Baja, and also get some more experience in running in Baja. So it was a developmental program that started in '67, and from that we developed a 510 that we ran with a 2-liter sports car motor in the next year, and that gave us even more experience when we ran down there. And then in '69, we put together a full team, of which Mary was part, and we ran 3 Datsun 510s that had been lightweight rally cars that had been built identical to the cars that the Nissan factory had run very successfully in the safari rallies in Africa and India. So when they brought those cars over, of course, we had some good experience in Baja, and I looked them over all, and explained to the chief engineer who came with the cars that I thought everything on the car looked pretty good, but I felt that the front end was going to be pretty fragile because of our experience the previous year. And there was a lot of resistance to doing that at that point. And, after a few days, and we ran down there a little bit, I finally said, why is it we can't make this modification that I want to do to the front suspension? And there was kind of a long silence, and he says, my boss designed that front suspension, and he said, if I change it, he said, that will put my job in jeopardy, so I can't change that. But he said, the solution is we will hire an airplane with 2 more Japanese factory team mechanics that ran in the safari, and we'll load it up with front suspension parts, and we'll follow you. And if the car breaks, we can land at these little dirt strips. And each little town had a dirt strip for medical emergencies. So they were dotted along the whole Baja Peninsula. So when the suspension would break, they'd come down right out of the sky. These 2 guys had run over and changed that whole front suspension on the car in about 5 or 6 minutes, and off we go again. So the cars were really, really fast, and of course Mary was, one of the lead drivers and doing very well with us. But we couldn't keep them all running without braking, and of course we couldn't fix them at night because that's the time that the drug runners fly at night. So it's against federal regulations in Mexico to fly your private plane at night. So in fact, that we were the fastest production 2-wheel drive team down there. We had this problem with the front suspension, which kept breaking. And had we not had that, we would have easily won it. As it was, we could get way out in front, and then it would break, and we'd have to wait for the airplane to come and fix it, and then catch up again. So at that time, we were running against the factory Saab team, and they had sent over their top drivers from Sweden to run against us, and they were very, very reliable, and they would just it was a tortoise and hare thing. We'd go screaming by them, and we'd be miles out in front, and then we'd be broken down, and they'd come trundling along and go by and, merrily wave at us as they went by. So I think we ended up 3rd instead of 1st, but it was a good experience. And if we hadn't had Mary McGee down there at the beginning to give us some indication of what Baja was like and where to go and how to get along down there, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So I think Mary's whole experience of running in Baja and running a bike down there long before anybody had ever decided, to take any cars down there was of a great help in planning it. And of course, it led into that 3-year program as we kept developing, and she was definitely part of it. So she made it happen.
Here at Slow Baja, we can't wait to drive our old Land Cruiser south of the border. And when we go, we'll be going with Baja Bound Insurance. Their website's fast and easy to use. Check them out at bajabound.com. That's bajabound.com, serving Mexico travelers since 1994. Pete, well, I've got you on the line, and I am tickled to have you here. John Morton told me at Monterey a couple years ago you were absolutely obsessed with Baja. And you're a fellow who's raced all over the world. Honestly, Le Mans, sports car racing. You've raced all over the world. You absolutely were dominant in the sports car scene here in the 60s and 70s with your program, putting a totally unknown car brand on the map and generating sales on Monday and all that. What was it about Baja? What was it that got under your skin? John said he hated it, and you loved it. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, John's a precision road racer, and it just drove him absolutely nuts when you went down there that you didn't run the line. You had to pick what you thought was going to be the best line, and Baja was so unusual because in the years that everybody had run all kinds of stuff up and down those roads down there, there were a variation of roads. They were all, maybe 100 yards apart or whatever. They split off and they joined back up again. And you had to figure out to be the fastest way down there. You'd go down and pre-run and figure out which of these little alternate courses that you might run would be fastest. And you couldn't tell because you'd come over the top of a hill, and as you'd look down, there would be like 3 different variations that you could take, right, left, or whatever. So the purpose in going down there to pre-run was to take each one of these and make notes on them and figure out which would be the best one. And then when you got on those, you didn't run the line. The Baja line is trying to figure out which is going to be the least destructive line for the car. So for John, who's a very precise driver, it absolutely drove him crazy because having been down there and run there, I was running this hard line, which was not the ideal road racing line. And so when he'd look at it, he'd go, God, that's crazy. We should be running the ideal line. But of course, that was all chewed up on the apex. So it took a while for us to get dialed in on it. And sometimes I made decisions down there that didn't work. I remember once we came up to a river that we had to cross, and there was a guy there that was trying to be helpful and pointing out what the least amount of depth was to cross over there. And I got out and I walked around in different spots on it, and I decided I was going to go someplace else. And I did, and it was the wrong one. If I'd taken the local advice, I would have gone right, And it just, John just thought, are you out of your mind? And of course I was, But that's the way you learn in Baja, and it was so much fun to run down there because it's the terrain that determines and how you read the terrain that determines how fast you're going to be. And if you can build a car that will hold up, it's wonderful, wonderful racing because it's a total adventure every time you go down there. And it can be an incredible amount of work. You can get stuck in the deep dirt down there, and it'll take you, 2 or 3 hours to go 6 feet and keep digging it out in the soft sand or whatever. But that's the whole, thing that makes Baja difficult, and it can be a tremendous amount of work, but it can also be a lot of fun. But if you don't go down there and you don't learn that, you have no idea what you're going to get into. And that was where Mary McGee was a great help to us because she had been down there. And, of course, running a bike down there, it's a little bit different than a car. Things are a little bit easier to run around on the hard line. So that experience, that running down there with Mary was the whole beginning of our adventures in Baja.
Well, Peter, I truly appreciate you making some time for Slow Baja today and telling me a little bit about Mary McGee and how she helped you guys get going down there. It must have been really something in that era. I can't imagine there were a lot of women sports car racers or doing any type of racers. She's a formidable woman, 5'11". You said you met her. Used to be at the bar there. Can you just tell me a little bit about?
She and her husband ran that bar. Bob was also a racer. He was the guy that prepped everything for her, and she loved to run down there and was a remarkable person. And I've always, I go on people's ability, not whether what they look like or who they are or whatever. It's on their abilities and knowledge, and that was what really made her stand out.
Well, I appreciate you sharing some stories. Thanks for making some time, and I'll let you get on to your productive year day. But again, can't say it sincerely enough. Thanks, Peter. All
right, real good. You take care now.
Give my regards to Gail.
I'll do that. Thank
Cheers.
You. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks. Bye-bye. Have I told you about my friend True Miller? You've probably heard the podcast, but let me tell you, her vineyard, Adobe Guadalupe Winery, is spectacular. From the breakfast at her communal table, bookended to an intimate dinner at night, their house-bred Azteca horses, Solomon the horseman, will get you on a ride that'll just change your life. The food, the setting, the pool, it's all spectacular. AdobeGuadalupe.com. For appearing on Slow Baja today, our guest will receive the beautiful Benchmark Map 72-page Baja Road and Recreation Atlas. Do not go to Baja without this, folks. You never know when your GPS is going to crap out, and you're going to want a great map in your lap. Trust me. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Peter Brock, as brief as it was. I could listen to problems of Peter telling me about trying to solve the problems of the Datsun front-end design all day long, and I hope sincerely that I get a chance to sit down with him soon to get the more on that story. Big news out of NORA today. Mary McGee was named the Grand Marshal of the upcoming NORA 500, which is at the end of September 29th through October 2nd in Ensenada. You can join me in that event in your street legal 4x4. Sign up for the Slow Baja Safari class. We'll have a lot of fun. You'll get to meet Mary McGee. I'll probably get to pour you a little Fortaleza after all the driving's done. It'll be a great long weekend in Ensenada. Okay, I will be back with something fun next week. Thank you for listening. I guess I've got to say it. Got to tell you about Mary McGee's pal, Steve McQueen, Baja lover. Baja is life. Everything that comes before or after is just waiting.